Think about it. In America, we celebrate every major holiday with foods that are both hyper addictive and really destructive to our bodies. Hope I didn't scare you off there, though, because we're about to discuss how we can navigate the holidays in a healthier way that still allows us to enjoy the things that we love without feeling terrible afterwards. Let's talk about that. Hi, I'm Pierce Whitley, your integrative health practitioner, bringing you weekly inspiration to help you pull up your health issues by the root. As we cultivate balance in our bodies, our soil will become inhospitable to symptoms. Welcome to Vitally Balanced. So a little bit more about that intro. I hope y'all will humor me for a little bit while I give all the holidays, or many of them, different names. Valentine's Day, we could call it the chocolate holiday. Easter is the Easter egg candy holiday. Halloween is the trick-or-treat candy holiday. Thanksgiving, the overload of simple carbs holiday. Christmas is now the fudge, Christmas cookies, and stocking candy holiday. At least that's what it is for our family. And then, of course, we have the booze holiday, New Year's. And so in giving these names and talking about the holidays like this, it's not to say that we shouldn't enjoy the treats that come along with this time of year. But I'm merely trying to make a point that we've turned a lot of our celebrations into excuses to eat a lot of bad food, and at such frequency that it pretty much addicts us for the whole year and pretty much our whole lives. Food should be used to celebrate, and it can be, but when it begins to control us, that's when it gets out of hand, and that's when I'm not such a fan of the way that we use food. We can't just find excuses to allow our food to control us. And again, food can be used for enjoyment, but it shouldn't be used to escape from reality. Emotional eating, that's a whole other podcast. We've all emotionally ate. A lot of us might be current emotional eaters. I definitely find myself stressed and emotionally eating sometimes. And depending on the time that we're at in our life, we might be relying on food as a crutch a little bit more or a little bit less than at other times. But in talking about this, what I want to talk about is the effect that these foods have on our bodies, not necessarily, setting a right or wrong of what you should be doing as far as like what food you should be eating. This food, first of all, provides a big blood sugar imbalance. It sets our blood sugar on a roller coaster pretty much. When we eat this food, a bunch of sugar surges into our system, and our body can't contain all of that sugar. It can't use all of that sugar. Once that sugar enters our system, our body tries to begin to store it. And two places it can store it is in our muscles as muscle glycogen and as glycogen in our liver. And in those two places combined, we store, a good amount of glucose, and our body can use that for fuel at a later time. But when we're eating so many treats in such a short amount of time, we're eating too much for our body to deal with. And likely our muscle glycogen and liver glycogen is already topped off at this time of year. And so what's our body doing with that blood sugar, or with that sugar we're putting in our body? Well, first it's gonna make our blood sugar go really high. But we're also going to need to find a place to store it, because high blood sugar is not good for our bodies to be in that state constantly. And so in order to stop that, our bodies are going to be smart. They're going to store it in fat. And in the olden days, when we didn't have a ton of food and we did find a big cache of food or calories, and we'd be able to eat that and store that, that would be really good. But in our modern world, that's not so good for us, because we have ready access to food. And when this instinct to store a lot of those calories gets activated over and over again, that's not to our benefit these days, because this influx of sugar, this imbalanced blood sugar and stored body fat, is going to end up leading to downstream to a whole lot of symptoms. And it does that through depleting the body of many different nutrients, because sugar doesn't have any real micronutrients, but it still needs nutrients to be processed. So it depletes our body of nutrients. It can contribute to leaky gut. Downstream, it can contribute to cognitive decline or brain fog, mood swings for sure, and inflammation as well. And then, if you're familiar with the health world at all, you'll know that pretty much everything, everything in the kitchen sink can be traced back to inflammation. Not necessarily everything, but that's the way that it seems sometimes. And that's not it. I mean, blood sugar imbalances are a big one for these treats, but there are also lots of toxins, especially in a lot of the ingredients we like to use for our holiday treats, especially if they're store bought. And I'm gonna make a podcast. The next podcast will actually be about how large amounts of fat and sugar can actually gridlock our metabolism. So make sure to tune into that one. So we've explored some of the problems that a lot of these very processed, hyper palatable, addictive, sugary foods lead to. And a lot of you might be thinking at this point, well, that sucks because I love these foods and I'm not sure I want to give them up. And if you've made it this far in the podcast and you've been thinking this, congratulations actually, because at least you're wanting to learn about the effects these foods can have on you. But what are the solutions? So I'm going to give 3 tips today. These are my 3 tips to get through the holidays happier and healthier, because ultimately, if we're feeling better, we're going to be happier. So what are my solutions? Well, first, before you go to a party or before you indulge in whatever treat you're going to be indulging in, eat protein, fat, and fiber. You can think PFF, protein, fat, and fiber. These nutrients are going to stabilize your hunger cravings, your cravings for sweets and sugar. It's going to cause you first to overeat less. It's also going to cause the sugar that you do eat to digest more slowly because it's going to be mixed in with the fat and with the fiber and with the protein. And there's a certain Instagram account that compares glucose spikes on a continuous glucose monitor. And you can see on her posts when she eats food, when she eats the sugar first, and then eats, like a good protein-filled meal afterwards, the blood sugar spike is enormous. But when she eats the protein, fat, and fiber meal first, and then eats the sugar afterwards, the blood sugar spike is very blunted. It's much less severe. So that's a big tip, and it's going to not only keep you from overeating, but it's going to keep you from experiencing as much of a blood sugar roller coaster. And so it's going to stop that negative cycle as well. So my second tip or suggestion for living a happier, healthier holiday is to utilize blood sugar supplements. So there are 2 different types of blood sugar support supplements that I recommend, and they work in 2 different ways. The first type are the ones that utilize minerals and other nutrients that our body needs in order to process sugar well. Some of those nutrients include magnesium, zinc, chromium, and vanadium. And these are minerals, specifically magnesium and chromium, that deal with insulin signaling and allowing our body to actually take that blood sugar and put it to use in our cells. And they're very important nutrients. And unfortunately, in our modern world, our soils are really depleted of these minerals, especially because of the fertilizers we're using on our foods. And so a lot of us don't have adequate levels of chromium and especially don't have adequate levels of magnesium. And so our insulin signaling is going to be lowered, our blood sugar is going to be higher and less controlled by our body. And so those are 2 favorite minerals that I like to see in blood sugar support supplements, with 2 others that I also like to see being zinc and vanadium. And those also help as well. So that's my favorite one to use on a long-term basis. And I take a blood sugar support supplement with a lot of those ingredients by Designs for Health pretty much every day. And there's some other favorite brands that I've got listed on my full script dispensary if any of you are interested in obtaining these supplements at a 15% discount. But and I'll link that in the show notes as well. Then there's a second type of blood sugar support supplement, and these are the supplements that use herbs. And the way I think of herbs and herbal medicine is like normal medicine. It's a compound that our body isn't necessarily deficient in. Like, for example, some herbs you might use to help with blood sugar as an educational resource, of course, and not necessarily medical advice, because I can't give you medical advice. But as an educational resource, some herbs that do help with blood sugar are ginkgo biloba and bitter melon, and these herbs do help balance blood sugar. But I think about these herbs like medicine because our body isn't deficient in bitter melon. It's not deficient in ginkgo biloba. And that's not why we're having high blood sugar. Our body doesn't need those herbs. It's not built to need those herbs. Just like our bodies aren't built to need those medicines. necessarily, it's not like we're deficient in statins if we've got high cholesterol. But we use these medicines, these herbs, to temporarily rebalance the body out of an imbalanced state. And really, that should be the role of herbs and medicines. I'd say 99% of the time should be to push our body back into balance and then resolve whatever root cause has put us out of balance. And so with the Christmas season, that might be the time where you're looking to use more of the herbal blood sugar support supplements, because it's just a short span of time, maybe just a couple days where you're having a couple different Christmas parties. You're sometimes eating the leftovers from those parties and you've made a couple of those treats yourself. And you want a way to help mitigate the blood sugar imbalances. That might be where an additional herbal supplement comes in for blood sugar support. But on a day-to-day basis, I like to rely more on the minerals and other nutrients that support blood sugar in a way that our body is more used to. Because when we give our body minerals, our body can actually be deficient in chromium and magnesium, and we actually do need those nutrients for our bodies to function normally. So those are my first two tips. Eat protein, fat, and fiber before the party or treat time, and utilize nutritional supplements according to the occasion. And my third, and this is a tip that everyone might not take, but it's one that's worked well for me, is abstain from sugar. And so before you come at me with your pitchforks and this is not for everyone. It's not going to be something that everyone's going to want to do, because let's face it, in our modern world, there's a lot of enjoyment to be had from sugar and from treats, and people have gotten really good at making things taste really good. And so I'm not saying everyone needs to abstain from treats, but it's something that I've done and I feel a lot better. Now, I'm not unbending about it. I'm not austere or super strict, but I do most of the time not eat refined sugar. And I'll still enjoy the smell of the treats. You know, whenever my family is making sugary things, I'll still love to smell it. I'll bake with them. I still enjoy the socialization around treats and just the general way, the atmosphere it gives off, the feel it has. But I just don't eat them most of the time because I find that for me, even a little bit will desensitize my taste buds, and it'll cause me to not enjoy regular food as much, because my taste buds are so hyped up on whatever sugar or hyper palatable foods that I'm eating. And again, it's not for everyone, but it's a tip that I found useful, and it will really depend on your personality and the way that you handle habits. Because for me, it would be a lot harder to not eat sugar 85% of the time and eat sugar 15% of the time. It's a lot harder for me to abstain most of the time, but not all of the time, or just to have one piece of fudge and not a whole pan, right? Not like I'd eat a whole pan, but that's my personality. I have a very obsessive, very zealous personality. If I find something that I really enjoy, I'm going to go all in on it. And you might have a different personality than that. You might do much better with just eating a small amount of treats or just cutting down on the amount that you eat. That's a little bit more like my mom. My mom really does enjoy treats, but as of late, she just hasn't eaten very many. But that doesn't mean she's never going to eat a piece of fudge or sparkle cookies when we make them for Christmas, because she definitely is going to, and she's going to enjoy them. So you really have to analyze what is your personality and what works for you. So I hope some of these tips helped you: the protein, fiber, fat, the nutritional supplements, and whether or not you want to abstain from treats or simply limit them. And if these tips did help you, or you feel like they would help a family member or friend that you know, make sure to pass along the podcast to them, and I'll see you all next Thursday.